At Christmas dinner, my daughter-in-law raised her glass and said loudly, "Starting today, I am going to manage everything for the family." "Mother-in-law, your credit card has been cancelled." My husband decided it was for the best. Everyone celebrated. I just smiled and said, "Son, you really don't know, do you?" He froze, looking as if his heart had stopped beating. My daughter-in-law screamed, "No, what?" Let me tell you how I arrived at that moment. How a night that was supposed to be full of joy turned into the instant my own son stabbed me in the chest without even realizing what he was doing. If these life stories move you, subscribe to the channel to keep hearing confessions like this one. Like the video and stay with me until the end, because nobody expected what was coming next. My name is Amelia. I am 68 years old, and on that Christmas night, dressed in my wine-colored wool shawl that I had knitted myself, I was sitting at the head of the table in my own house, watching my family celebrate my humiliation. The table was set with the embroidered tablecloth I sewed 30 years ago. The aromatic candles gave off a scent of cinnamon. The golden turkey rested in the center, surrounded by *romeritos* and cod. Everything looked perfect, everything, except for what was about to happen. Valeria, my daughter-in-law, stood up. She was wearing a tight peach-colored dress that showed off her 5-month baby bump. Her brown hair fell in perfect waves over her shoulders. She smiled with that security only people who believe they have already won possess. She raised her glass of cider and tapped the crystal gently with a spoon. The tinkling sound caught everyone's attention. My son Rodrigo, sitting next to her, looked at her with adoration. My sisters-in-law, my nephews' wives, stopped talking. The children running around the living room stopped. Even the Christmas music seemed to lower in volume. "Family," Valeria began with a firm, clear voice. "Today is a special day, not just because of Christmas, but because I have an important announcement to make." I felt a knot in my stomach. Something in her tone warned me that this wouldn't just be about the baby. As you know, Rodrigo and I are expecting our first child. This makes us think about the future, about responsibilities. She paused dramatically, letting her words float in the air. "That is why we have made a very important family decision." Rodrigo nodded beside her, serious, wearing that expression he put on when he believed he was doing the right thing. Valeria continued. "Starting today, I am going to manage all the finances of this family. It is time for someone young, with modern financial education, to take control of things." The silence was so dense you could hear the crackling of the candles. "Mother-in-law," she said, turning to me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Your credit card was cancelled this morning. Rodrigo and I decided it is better this way. At your age, you don't need to worry about expenses or responsibilities. We will take care of everything. If you need something, just ask for it in advance. Is that clear?" The words fell like stones into a calm lake. But the lake wasn't me. The lake was my family. My sisters-in-law exchanged looks of approval. One of them, Sophia, even applauded softly. "What a good idea, Valeria. My mother-in-law should do the same. These older ladies are a disaster with money." My nephews laughed. Someone clinked their glass with Valeria's. Rodrigo smiled proudly, as if he had just solved a problem no one else had seen. And I just observed them. I observed how my 32-year-old son, the boy I raised alone after becoming a widow, the man I shaped with tears and sacrifice, looked at me as if I were a burden that he had finally learned how to manage. I felt something break inside me. It wasn't rage, not yet. It was something deeper. It was the confirmation of a suspicion I had held for 3 years, ever since the day Valeria entered our lives. I took a sip of my fruit punch. The bittersweet taste reminded me of all the previous Christmases, when it was just Rodrigo and me, sharing tamales at our small table, laughing because I had burned the turkey. Now we were here, in this house he believed was mine, surrounded by people celebrating my defeat. I placed the glass on the table. The sound resonated louder than I expected. All eyes turned toward me. Valeria remained standing, expectant, waiting for my reaction. She wanted to see me cry, she wanted me to beg, she wanted me to break. But instead of that, I smiled. It was a calm, almost sweet smile. The smile of someone who knows something the others ignore. I stood up slowly, feeling the weight of my 68 years in my knees. I looked my son directly in the eyes, those honey-colored eyes he inherited from his father, eyes that once looked at me with pure love before the poison of ambition clouded them. "Son," I said softly, with a calm voice. "You really don't know, do you?" Rodrigo blinked, his smile froze. Something in my tone made him doubt. "Know what, Mom?" he asked with an insecure voice. Valeria stepped forward nervously. "Know what?" she repeated, but now her voice had an edge of panic. I didn't answer immediately, I just looked at both of them. And in that silence, in that pause loaded with meaning, I saw how doubt began to slide down their faces like cold water. Because they knew nothing. They didn't know who I really was. They didn't know what I had built in 40 years of silence. They didn't know that the woman they had just publicly humiliated was the only one holding the keys to the kingdom they thought they were conquering. The table fell into complete silence. You could only hear the ticking of the wall clock and the crackling of the firewood in the fireplace. And there I was, Amelia, the widow, the seamstress, the selfless mother, the woman they had underestimated for the last time. But to understand why that question froze them, I need to take you back in time. I need to tell you who I am, where I come from, and how I built an empire in the shadows while everyone believed I was just a harmless little old lady. Because the worst hadn't happened yet. 40 years ago, I wasn't Amelia, the humiliated mother-in-law at a Christmas dinner. I was Amelia, the 28-year-old widow who had just buried her husband while 7 months pregnant, facing a mountain of debt that threatened to bury her alive. I remember the day of the funeral as if it were yesterday. The sky was grey, heavy with clouds that never quite released the rain. The coffin rested underground in the San Miguel cemetery. I was there in my black dress borrowed from a neighbor, feeling my son kicking inside my belly as if protesting his father's absence. I didn't cry that day, not because I didn't want to, but because my tears had already run out 3 days prior, when the doctor told me, "I'm sorry, we did everything possible." Javier had died in a traffic accident. A truck ran a red light, and in an instant, everything we had built together vanished. What didn't vanish were the debts. 2 weeks after the burial, there was a knock at my door. It was Don Ramiro, the owner of the hardware store where Javier had asked for credit to repair our roof. He handed me a crumpled paper with handwritten numbers. "Mrs. Amelia, I regret bothering you in your morning, but it's 85,000 pesos. Your husband signed the house deed as a guarantee." I felt the ground open beneath my feet. 85,000 pesos. In 1985, that was a fortune. And I was a seamstress earning 300 pesos a week fixing hems and darning trousers. I closed the door and sat on the living room floor. My hand caressed my swollen belly, and for the first time since Javier died, I spoke out loud. "Forgive me, my child. Your mom doesn't know how we are going to get out of this, but I swear to you, I swear by the Virgin of Guadalupe, that we will make it." I had no plan, I had no money, I barely had strength. But I had a Singer sewing machine my grandmother had left me, and I had hands that knew how to turn fabric into dreams. The next day, I walked 6 blocks to the house of Dona Estela Mendoza, a high society lady who had once asked me to fix an imported dress. I knocked on her wrought iron door with my heart in my throat. When she opened it, she saw me there, pregnant, with dark circles under my eyes reaching my soul, holding a worn portfolio full of my hand-drawn designs. "Dona Estela," I said with a trembling but firm voice. "I need work. Anything. But I promise you that if you give me a chance, you will never find anyone who sews better than I do." She looked me up and down. Then, to my surprise, she smiled. "Come in, child. Let's have coffee." That afternoon changed my life. Dona Estela didn't just give me work, she gave me an education. She taught me that sewing wasn't just a trade, it was a business. She explained profit margins, how to charge by design and not just by the hour, and the importance of having clients who paid well rather than many who paid little. "Amelia," She told me one day while we drank tea in her garden full of bougainvilleas. You have a gift, but a gift without strategy is like having gold without knowing you have it. I am going to invest in you. I will lend you money to buy more quality fabrics, to rent a little workshop, and you will pay me back when you start earning. There is no rush, but there is a condition. Never settle for being just a seamstress. Become a businesswoman. 2 months later, Rodrigo was born, a beautiful baby weighing 3.2 kilograms, with his father's eyes and my upturned nose. I held him in my arms in that small public hospital room and whispered, "You are going to have everything I didn't have, I promise you." And I kept my promise. I worked like never before. From 5 in the morning to 11 at night. Rodrigo slept in a little crib next to my sewing machine. The sound of the mechanical pedal became his lullaby. While I sewed wedding dresses, quinceañera gowns, and gala outfits, he grew up surrounded by colorful threads and scraps of silk. With the money donor Estella lent me, I opened my first workshop, Amelia's Fine Couture, in a 20-square-meter space in the Roma neighborhood. I hired 2 girls from the neighborhood who knew how to sew. I taught them everything donor Estella had taught me. The first 6 months were hard. There were nights I ate only beans with tortillas so I could buy more fabric, but little by little, the business grew. Society ladies started recommending me. "You have to go to Amelia. That girl sews like the angels." By the time Javier had been gone 3 years, I had already paid off all his debts, every peso, down to the last cent. Donor Estella came to visit the workshop the day I made my last payment. She hugged me tight and said, "I'm proud of you, child. Now comes the hard part, growing." And I grew. I opened a second workshop, then a third. I started selling not just to private clients, but to elegant boutiques. I registered my brand. Donor Estella introduced me to an accountant, to a lawyer. She taught me to invest. The money you earn isn't for spending, Amelia, it's for making it grow. Buy properties, rent them out, create passive income. I didn't understand well what passive income meant, but I learned. Oh, how I learned. I bought my first commercial space when Rodrigo was 8 years old, a small shop on a well-located corner. I rented it to a lady who sold groceries. Every month she paid me rent, money that came in without me having to sew a single button. Rodrigo studied in a public school. He wore mended uniforms. We ate simply. We lived in the same humble house Javier had left us. But in secret, I was building an empire. By 10 years of widowhood, I already had 3 commercial spaces rented out. By 15 years, it was 5. I bought properties in areas that were growing before prices went up. I invested in bank certificates. I saved every peso as if it were the last. And never did I tell Rodrigo anything. I wanted my son to grow up hungry, with a desire to strive, to value money because he had seen it be scarce. I didn't want him to become one of those spoiled rich kids who waste fortunes because they never had to earn them. So I maintained the facade, the widow seamstress, the struggling mother, the simple woman who barely scraped by. When Rodrigo turned 18 and entered the Technological University to study industrial engineering, I told him he had gotten a full scholarship. In reality, I paid every peso of his tuition, 23,000 pesos per semester. When he graduated and got his first job as a junior engineer, earning 18,000 pesos a month, he was so proud. He hugged me and said, "Mom, now I'm going to take care of you. You don't have to work so hard anymore." I laughed. I caressed his face. "Oh, my child, if only you knew." But I didn't say anything. By then, I already had 8 commercial properties, all rented, generating 180,000 pesos monthly in passive income. I had 3 luxury apartments in La Condesa that I had bought at auction prices during the economic crisis, and I had 4,200,000 pesos in bank investments. My total net worth exceeded 7 million pesos, and Rodrigo believed his mother barely survived sewing dresses. I did it for love, for protection, because I wanted him to become a man on his own merits. But I never imagined that this silence, this white lie, would become the weapon they would one day use to sink me. Because 3 years later, Rodrigo met Valeria at a corporate party, and everything began to change. She arrived in my life like fog arrives, slowly, almost imperceptibly, but covering everything until you can no longer see the road. And I, who had survived widowhood, debts, and 40 years of struggle, didn't see what was coming until it was too late. Rodrigo was 30 when he met Valeria. I was 65, and at that moment, my son still didn't know the truth about me. To him, I was the sacrificed mother living in a modest little house in the Narvat neighborhood, who kept sewing dresses to stay active, who rejected his offers of financial help with stubborn pride. No, my love, I'm fine. You save your money for your future. What Rodrigo didn't know was that this modest little house was merely one of my 9 properties. I had bought it 20 years ago for 200,000 pesos. Now it was worth more than 8.5 million. But I kept it simple on purpose. Cream-colored walls, old but comfortable furniture, a living room with that flowered armchair he remembered from his childhood. Everything was theater, a stage carefully designed so my son would believe his mother barely survived with dignity. Meanwhile, I kept building. At 65, I had expanded my small empire. I had 8 commercial spaces rented in premium zones, 2 pharmacies, 3 medical offices, a cafe, a stationery store, and a beauty salon. Every month, without lifting a finger, 180,000 clean pesos entered my bank accounts. I also owned 3 luxury apartments in Polanco that Dona Estela and I bought as partners when the market collapsed in 2008. We rented them to foreign executives for 40,000 pesos a month each. My accountant, Licenciado Morales, a serious 60-year-old man with thick-rimmed glasses, visited me every 3 months to review the finances. He always knocked on my door at 9 in the morning when he knew Rodrigo was already at work. "Mrs. Amelia," he would say as we reviewed the account statements in my dining room, "your investments keep growing. You are already at 4,300,000 pesos in funds and bonds. Do you want to diversify more?" I would nod, taking notes in my hardcover notebook. The seamstress who never finished high school now understood annual yields, compound interest rates, and long-term investment strategies. Dona Estela had taught me well before dying 5 years ago. Her last will was to leave me her share of the properties we had bought together. "You paid back every peso I lent you, Amelia, and you gave me something more valuable. You showed me that betting on women is never a bad investment." But none of this existed for Rodrigo. To him, I remained the widow who sometimes asked him to help change a light bulb or fix a dripping faucet. I lied to him? Yes. But I did it for love. I wanted my son to learn the value of effort, to know how to earn things. And it worked. Rodrigo became a responsible, hard-working, honest engineer. He rented a small apartment, drove a used car, saved every month. I was proud of him. Until Valeria arrived. He met her at an industrial engineering conference. She worked as a marketing manager at a consulting firm. 32 years old, university degree, designer clothes, French perfume. She spoke with that security of someone born with open doors. Rodrigo came to visit me one radiant Saturday with that smile I hadn't seen since he was a child. "Mom, I met someone special." My heart filled with joy. My son, always so shy, had finally found someone. "What's her name, my love?" "Valeria. She's incredible, Mom. Intelligent, successful, beautiful. I want you to meet her." 2 weeks later, she knocked on my door. She arrived in a white BMW. She wore large sunglasses, a leather bag I recognized as designer. I had sewn enough imitations to know the difference, and heels that sounded authoritative against the floor. I opened the door with my apron still on, hands stained with flour because I was making cookies. Nice to meet you. I'm Valeria." She extended her hand. Her grip was brief, almost disdainful. Her eyes scanned my house in 2 seconds. The old armchair, the ancient television, the faded curtains. I saw her expression change, a microsecond of disappointment immediately covered with a professional smile. That day we ate *pozole* I had prepared. Rodrigo talked excitedly about his plans together. Valeria nodded, But her eyes kept wandering around my house, evaluating, cataloguing, judging. When they left, I sat in my flowered armchair. Something in my stomach didn't feel right. But I told myself, give it time, Amelia, you barely know her. The next 6 months were a whirlwind. Rodrigo and Valeria became boyfriend and girlfriend formally. He started changing small things at first. And well. He scratched the back of his neck nervously. There's something I want to ask you. I felt a chill. Tell me. Valeria thinks that, well, when we get married, it would be good if you sold this house and came to live with us. She says it's too big for you alone, that you're getting older, that you need someone to take care of you. There it was. The first move on the board. I smiled calmly. Oh, my boy, I am perfectly fine here. This house holds my memories, my sewing workshop. I can't imagine being anywhere else. Rodrigo frowned. But Mom, Valeria is right. What happens if you fall and there's no one? If you get sick? We could take care of you better. Take care of you. That phrase. They lost the house, the cars, everything. Her father fell into depression. Her mother, Rebecca, had to start selling costume jewelry in street markets to survive. But Valeria decided she would never, ever be poor again. She got a job at the consulting firm by lying on her resume. She added certifications she didn't have. She exaggerated her experience. She was good at talking, at selling smoke, at making mediocre projects sound revolutionary in PowerPoint. She earned 25,000 pesos a month, but she spent 40,000. How? Credit cards. 5 in total. She rotated them like a desperate juggler. She paid the minimum on one with cash from another. She bought brand-name clothes at clearance sales. You look lost. Rodrigo blushed. Is it that obvious? Valeria laughed, a stuttered, musical laugh. Relax, I can't stand these events either. Want me to teach you the trick to survive them? Follow me. And so it began. With a conversation. With that capacity, Valeria had to make the other person feel special, seen, important. Rodrigo fell completely. They went out 3 times before she allowed him a kiss. She played her cards well, played hard to get. Her eyes evaluating every corner of my house, cataloguing the value of things. The way she smiled, but her gaze remained cold. I knew that look. I had seen it in clients who came to my workshop with fake bills, in suppliers who sold me defective fabric. It was the look of someone always calculating. Asterisk, what can I get out of this? How does it benefit me? Asterisk, during that first meal, we talked about trivialities, but I asked soft, casual questions. And your family, Valeria, what do they do? My father was in the automotive sector, he's retired now. Right. Halfway. Where do you live right now? In an apartment in Nápoles. It's small, cozy. She omitted that she rented it with 2 roommates to afford it. I don't need anyone to take care of me. A flicker of annoyance crossed her face, quickly covered with another smile. Of course. Just know you can count on us. She left a silent warning in the air. Asterisk, you are in my way, asterisk, her eyes said. Asterisk, and I am going to move you. Asterisk, that night I took out the report from my safe, read it again, and made a decision. I wasn't going to interfere yet, but I wasn't going to lower my guard either. Valeria wanted to play, but she didn't know who she was messing with. Because I had built an empire from zero. And if Valeria thought a little old seamstress was easy prey, she was about to discover the most expensive error of her life. The wedding was just the beginning. But I breathed, took the papers, and read them carefully. They were to transfer my house, the smallest one, valued at 850,000 pesos, to his name. All right, I said finally. Rodrigo looked surprised. Really? Yes. If this gives you peace of mind, son, I'll do it. I signed right there. What he didn't know was that this house was my least valuable property, that I had 8 others generating millions. But I needed them to believe they had one. Because when they discovered the truth, the fall would be much more painful. And that Christmas arrived. The toast. Valeria, drunk on power and champagne, announcing she would control everything. That my card had been cancelled. That I was officially under her administration. Rodrigo approached, picked one up, read it, and went pale. This says you own a pharmacy in Colonia Roma. That is correct, I confirmed. I bought it 18 years ago for 300,000 pesos. Now it's worth 900,000. I rent it out for 22,000 pesos a month. He picked up another document. His hands were shaking. 3 medical offices in La Condesa. I bought them during the 2008 crisis. Excellent investment. He picked up another. A cafe, a stationery store, a beauty salon. All rented. Passive income, son. Money that comes in without me lifting a finger. Valeria staggered closer, snatching documents, reading them with wild eyes. This can't be real. This is. These are 3 apartments in Polanco, I continued. Each valued at over 1 million pesos, rented to foreign executives. 40,000 pesos monthly each. Licenciado Morales kept pulling out papers like a magician pulling scarves from a hat, but these scarves were dynamite. Investment certificates, 4,300,000 pesos in funds, government bonds. The room was deathly silent. You could only hear the rustle of paper. Sophia whispered, "My God." Marcella had collapsed into a chair, mouth open. Rodrigo looked at me as if I were a stranger. "Mom, what is all this?" I stood up slowly. I took one of the documents, the most important one. This, my love, is who I really am. The widow seamstress you thought was your mother? Why didn't you ever tell me? And there was the question I had waited for. I approached my son, touching his face like when he was a child. Because I wanted you to love me for who I am, not for what I have. I wanted you to become a man on your own merits, not because of my money. Tears rolled down my cheeks, the first genuine tears of the night. But Valeria taught you that money is worth more than love, that power is worth more than family. And today, my son, today you chose to humiliate the woman who gave you life, believing you had a right to crumbs that didn't even exist. The silence was deafening. Valeria was pale, whiter than her wedding dress had been, because in that moment she understood her mistake. Licenciado Morales cleared his throat. "Allow me to clarify, Mrs. Valeria. Mrs. Amelia never committed fraud. All her income is declared to the SAT. She pays taxes religiously. Legally, there is nothing to claim." Valeria ignored him. She turned to the other guests, looking for allies. "Do you hear this? This woman hid millions while watching her son kill himself working." Rodrigo wasn't killing himself, I corrected. Rodrigo earned an honest salary doing honest work. I paid every peso of his education. I bought his first car. I helped him when he needed it. But I wanted him to learn to fend for himself. How convenient, Valeria spat. What a pretty speech. But the truth is you enjoyed watching us suffer, watching us beg. Something inside me broke. The patience I had maintained for 3 years exploded. Suffer. My voice rose in volume. Do you know what it is to suffer, Valeria? I took a step toward her. She shrank back. I was left a widow at 28, 7 months pregnant, with 85,000 pesos of debt threatening to take my roof. I sewed until my fingers bled. I ate beans so my son could have milk. That asterisk is suffering. I took a breath. You suffered because you couldn't buy the designer bag you wanted. Because your rented BMW wasn't yours. The designer clothes are fake or clearance. Rodrigo finally spoke. His voice sounded broken. Is that true, Valeria? She didn't answer, she just cried. But they weren't tears of repentance. They were tears of rage, of humiliation. Licenciado Morales continued relentlessly. And there is more, Mr. Rodrigo. Your wife has 5 credit cards in her name, all maxed out. Total debt, 153,000 pesos, with interest accumulating at 28% annually. Rodrigo staggered. He had to lean against the wall. 5 cards? Valeria, you told me you only had one for emergencies. I was going to tell you, she stammered. When we refinanced the house. I took one last document. We will talk tomorrow. If I leave now, Valeria threatened, her voice dangerous, I'm not coming back. Rodrigo looked at her for a long moment. Then don't come back. The world stopped. Valeria looked at him with disbelief, waiting for him to retract, to beg. But Rodrigo turned his back and walked toward me. Valeria stood there frozen for 5 eternal seconds. Then, with a scream of fury, she grabbed her bag and left. The door slammed shut, shaking the walls. The silence she left was absolute. The guests were petrified. Finally, Sophia cleared her throat. We think it's time to go. My silence created the space for Valeria to manipulate you. What do I do now, Mom? I have a baby on the way, a wife who lied to me, a life that is falling apart. Now, my love, you rebuild with truth. And I will be here, as I have always been. The days after Christmas were strange. Rodrigo stayed at my house, in his old room. 3 days later, Valeria called. She wanted to talk. She had a plan. She suggested therapy. She used the baby as a shield. And then came the threat. If you don't come back, I will sue you for maximum alimony. I will ask for the house. I let her lie because I wanted her to have the opportunities one didn't have. We held hands. 2 mothers who had struggled all their lives. Mrs. Rebecca, I promised, when that baby is born, you will know him. No matter what happens between Rodrigo and Valeria. On March 15th, my grandson Mateo was born. When I entered the hospital room, I saw Valeria holding the baby, exhausted. Our eyes met, and in that moment, the war paused. Because in her arms was my grandson. Do you want to hold him? Valeria asked softly. I took Mateo. He smelled new, like hope. I'm sorry, Mrs. Amelia, Valeria whispered. I'm sorry for everything. I know, Valeria. I know. The 3 months following the birth were a strange limbo. Not for money, but for love. Yesterday Mateo asked me, Grandma, why do you work if you are rich? I knelt in front of him. My love, I don't work for money. I work because every stitch reminds me of who I am, where I come from, and where I am going. Where are you going, Grandma? Toward a future where you know that true value isn't in what you own, but in what you build and the dignity you never let anyone take away. If this story touched your heart, leave a comment telling me where you follow us from. Have you ever had to defend your dignity against your own family? Subscribe for more stories of women who rise, who fight,